Excited because we get to talk defensive line today. This is the news. Dee Ford is expected back for the 49ers on Sunday against Minnesota. I hinted at it a couple days ago. Now we know for sure. After 3 games out on injured reserve following the concussion that affected his ongoing back injury, Dee Ford's ready to go again. He's going to be back out of practice for the 49ers on Thanksgiving on Thursday. And then they're going to hope to reprise what you see right next to me, right here. This is from the playoff game in January 2020. You could see Kirk Cousins there, but most importantly, you could see Dee Ford lined up at an interesting spot. He's not the furthest out in the wide nine. Look at this guy over here. That's Nick Bosa. Dee Ford on the inside. What does that mean? It means the 49ers were getting creative the last time that they played the Minnesota Vikings. And you know how this ended up. Dee Ford working against a guard. That's Pat Elflein at left guard. Kirk Cousins is done. No chance. Too quick for the guard. One more time. Slow-mo this time. I mean, it took one move, one hand swipe. And Elflein, I mean, that's never a position that you want to be in. End zone camera. See the back of his jersey. Dee Ford is about to eat Kirk Cousins alive. So that was the 49ers' little variation to torment the Minnesota Vikings when they faced them in the playoffs. Dee Ford lined up on the inside there later in the game. Nick Bosa was on the outside. And the reason I illustrate that is Dee Ford's return is going to give the 49ers a whole lot of flexibility up front. Now, that is health contingent. But all the 49ers need from Dee Ford is 10 quality snaps per game. They could space those snaps out so that they attack the right spots intelligently. With Dee Ford's injury, you can't see it in this video, but you could see it when he gets down in his 4-point stance and he gets really low. That's normally when he's lined up on the very edge, the 9 technique way out there on the corner. The guy gets into a track start stance. He's 250 pounds. There's so much explosion off of a Dee Ford get off that, unfortunately, given the current state of his back, it's just not a sustainable thing to do too many times. The 49ers and Ford are going to have to manage this for the rest of the season, for the rest of his career, however long he's with the 49ers. But you manage it, you pick your spots, and you go 100% of those spots. And if you pick those spots right with Dee Ford, he can give you those 10 impactful snaps per game that you need as the 49ers. And when I talk about impactful snaps, I talk about this. This is the Nascar package that I envisioned for the 49ers. Now, the New York Giants in the 2007 Super Bowl against undefeated New England Patriots, they're the ones that made that NASCAR package popular, right? They had to find a way to beat Tom Brady and Randy Moss and get after the quarterback. And they figured that their only possible advantage to truly exploit would be to line up quicker edge rushers against guards on the interior, which is why I showed you that Dee Ford video working against Pat Elflein. So I envision the 49ers now in these third and long situations, and this is all dependent on them stopping Dalvin Cook, building a lead, getting into 3rd and 6+ situations. I envision a NASCAR package of Bosa, Eric Armstead, Arden Key, and Dee Ford. With Eric Armstead and Arden Key being the primary guys lined up inside, but when you look at that alignment right there on the screen, you could flip it around whichever way you want. You can move Bosa inside. You can move Dee Ford inside. I mean, it's so adaptable, right? Armstead has experience playing on the edge with the first 3 or 4 years in the whole Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch regime. And Arden Key is obviously naturally an edge player. But as we've talked about, and as Arden Key talked about today before 49ers practice, he sees more success rushing over the inside because he's a lighter edge rusher. He's long, 6'5", and he's athletic. And if you go back to watching this with Dee Ford working against Elflein, a guard, the 49ers space it out. Just look at the spacing right here at the time of the snap. There are 5 body widths, maybe 6 body widths in between DeForest Buckner, miss him, he's with the Colts now, Dee Ford, and maybe 3 body widths here between Dee Ford and Nick Bosa. That's what the wide 9 is all about. It's about spacing out the alignment so that your athletes on the defensive line have room to eat, have room to operate, have room to work. So Arden Key at 6'5", with the athleticism that he has, being a lighter edge rusher, he's been doing similar things to guards the past couple of weeks that Dee Ford is doing to guards, a guard, Pat Elflein, in this video. It's more satisfying when we see it finish with Kirk Cousins getting sacked. So that's the goal for the 49ers. The goal is to get your defensive ends matched up against guards, which is why the Nascar package outlined down here is so key, pun intended, Arden Key. Arden Key has 3 sacks in 3 weeks after having 3 sacks in 3 years with the Raiders. They didn't use him on the inside nearly as much. So you have to get Arden Key on the inside. You could use Bosa anywhere. He has 10 sacks in 10 games. The guy's awesome. Armstead is an inside-out player, and Dee Ford is obviously an inside-out player. But Dee Ford, here's the thing. Dee Ford is only going to give you a few snaps. You have to remember that. You have to pick and choose your battles. So that's why your other depth is so important. Charles Omenihu has 3 pressures in his 2 games with the 49ers so far. Can they get anything out of Jordan Willis? Obviously, on base downs, you're going to want DJ Jones and maybe Contavious Street to give you some of that punch from the inside. But their main job, when you look at guys like DJ and Contavious Street and Eric Armstead on base downs, Bosa, 15 tackles for loss this season. So he's obviously playing on all downs. The goal there is to stop the run. Just like the 49ers offense and its pass game and its efficiency on those third downs to move the chains is what buys the ticket to be able to run the ball extensively 40 plus times a game. I mean, you have to have the good pass game to convert those third downs to be able to unlock the treasure trove of running 40 times a game. Just like that dynamic, on defense, stopping the run with your big dudes, your base package in the 4-3, DJ Jones, Contavious Street, Bosa setting a hard edge, all of that, that is what earns you the right and the chance to pass rush in true sack situations. And that's 3rd and 6 plus. So that's going to be challenging in this game against the Vikings because Minnesota does struggle in pass protection. So if you can get it to 3rd and 6 plus, then you're going to be able to do some of the stuff that the 49ers did against them back in that 2019 playoff game. Now, when you look at this, you see Dee Ford working against Pat Elflein. He's no longer with the Minnesota Vikings. At left guard now, they have a second-year guy. His name's Ezra Cleveland. So at this spot right here at left guard, you're going to have Cleveland, who is a very powerful run blocker, but he, just like essentially everybody else, Christian Darrisaw, whoever the Vikings are going to play at center, they've rotated 2 guys at center this year. He just like everybody else on this offensive line, except for Brian O'Neill at right tackle, has struggled this year in pass protection. So Dalvin Cook can run. Ezra Cleveland and all of these guys can run block. I mean, I think the Vikings have demonstrated that they can run block, although there's been some boom or bust to that, but that's a story for another time. The 49ers, though, have also shown boom or bust in their defense in terms of run stopping this year, especially since Javon Kinlaw has been unavailable. So it's up to DJ Jones. It's up to Samson Ebukam. You know, Ebukam hasn't been as bad against the run, but he's been unproductive in pass rushing. So you're trying to scrounge some pressure from him when it comes to pass rushing. But most of all, if he's the guy that's in there on base downs, because Minnesota can throw on base downs. I mean, these guys love to go for Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen downfield. But whoever's in on base downs, whether it be Ebukam or Omenihu, it could be any of those guys, they have to stop the run. Because if you earn 3rd and 6, then you've earned your right to eat as a defensive line and do what you see on the screen here. So no more Elflein. Ezra Cleveland's in there, but I still think this Minnesota offensive line is vulnerable, especially up the middle. And then Darrisaw, the left tackle, I mean, he's a young guy. So I think Bosa's going to line up on both sides, and Bosa's going to be able to go to work based on which matchup he feels best about. But the whole thing here is that Dee Ford is expected back. So for those 10 most important snaps of the game, or 8 most important snaps, there shouldn't be that many. If there are more than 8 or 10 extremely important pass down snaps in the game, your defense has been on the field too long. So for X amount of snaps, you get Ford, you can get creative, it could be a complete game changer for the 49ers defensive line. I mean, here's a stat for you. Back in 2019, the 49ers sack rate was 4 times higher when Dee Ford was available than when he wasn't. 4x with Ford and when he wasn't. So you could talk all day about Ford being hurt a lot. That team doesn't make the Super Bowl without Dee Ford. He was a game changer on the defensive line. And I don't know if he's going to be a complete wrecker and game changer this year. He was playing well before his injury this year, not quite as well as 2019, but he absolutely can be the winning difference in some of these games when you talk about the cumulative effect. You got Bosa, career season on one side. I mean, I wrote about Bosa the other day. We'll pop that one open. You have Bosa on one side, and you have whoever on the other side. And you need that other side to give you the supplement to what Bosa brings. There he is, Nick Bosa. Better than ever, and that's huge for this 49ers playoff push. All right, any questions about the defensive line? What about Kinlaw? He's out for the year. Thank you, Travis. I appreciate that. Yep, Arden Key last week. That was huge. Remember, Arden Key lined up on the inside, and today Arden Key himself, when asked, said, yeah, I like rushing against the inside. You might ask, why is that? Well, with that kind of length and that kind of speed, I mean, the athleticism for a guy like Arden Key is off the charts. So guards are typically designed to operate in tighter quarters. But the 49ers wide 9, you know, we could go back to the wide 9. Got this clip off of Matt Bowen's tweet. Just look at the alignment of the wide 9. Look how far apart all of those linemen are. Now, you could be more vulnerable to the interior run, right? But if it's 3rd and 6, people aren't going to run. So that's, you know, key number 1. You can get away with being vulnerable against the run if you shut defenses down on rundown. So then you ask me, well, what happens on 1st and 2nd down, you know, when a defense can run? Well, right here, this guy. You see where my mouse is? Bottom left corner. Maybe I should make myself disappear right there. That's why you have 54 on your team, because you create an advantage by widening out and really stretching out the offensive line and letting your defensive linemen get to work from an athletic perspective. But you create a disadvantage while you're doing that. So you have this guy, Fred Warner, 54, and that's his job, to roam and to cut off the gaps that are created by your wide 9 alignment. 49ers might also get Dre Greenlaw back this week. They are in a position right now where the entire roster is full. We could take a look at the roster in another video, but the defense is healing up, and Dee Ford is a big return there. So get something from Ford, get something from Amenahu, get something from Ebicom finally. I mean, they only have a couple pressures from him all season. And figure out a way to patch it all together. But the key is stopping that Vikings run game. I'll tell you what, the Vikings struggle in pass protection. So you have to play the game on your terms and get them to that spot. This is true. Bosa has been getting held like crazy. If the officials start counting that or calling that a little bit more, 49ers will really be cooking. But I smell something cooking for this 49ers defensive line with Dee Ford coming back. God, if you again, is that too much to ask? 10 snaps. I don't know. And it's not Dee Ford's fault. I mean, the guy, that it was almost too explosive for his own good, right? And his back is so strained from it now. But if they could find a way to manage him and get those handful of quality snaps per game, this defensive line could be good. And, you know, this also explains why Kyle Shanahan is running every single play clock offensively down to 1 or 0 seconds. Because Kyle Shanahan knows that the more time his offense gobbles up on the field, the fewer snaps his defense has to play. And when, you know, these linemen are out there, when Dee Ford is out there on the field, that means that you could more strategically use him. You're not out there for 80 plays on defense. You're only out there for 50 to 60. It's a huge difference, especially when you're trying to preserve bodies on that defensive line. The wide 9, I wouldn't say it requires more technique from the defensive line. It just lets your defenders operate on islands out there. I mean, everything requires technique. It might require slightly different technique. It just lets guys work because it spreads it out, so there's less of a bunch. So, yeah, technically it requires better and more athletic defensive linemen, so you don't look completely stupid running it. But it's a pass rushing alignment is what it is. And it hurts you against the run. But again, that's why you got Warner. That's why you have Greenlaw. That's why you have Alshire. Those are linebackers meant to roam. That's why the 49ers got Quan Alexander, but then he got hurt. But so linebackers could run, who could fill in the gaps left behind by the wide nine. All right, I'm going to have more 49ers Vikings content after this. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you could see it. There's a lot more coming. I'm going to talk about Steve Young's Vikings run, the 1987 upset, a full game preview. And when we get to 5,000 people, as I promised a couple months ago, there'll be a giveaway. There'll be a prize. So tell your friends, subscribe. We're almost at 5K, and then the next milestone will be 10K and then 20K. It's going to be a lot of fun. But hit subscribe now. Hit like now. 49ers Vikings on Sunday. Hope you enjoyed the defensive line breakdown. Everybody take care.